Welcome everybody, I'm Ed Cruz, and this is the last lesson. And today this is, I believe, episode 16, and maybe, I hate using part 1, part 2 or whatever, because I hate being on those reels as far as you have to do it one way or another. So episode 16, we're going to focus a little bit on the core concepts as far as what you need to focus on the development on the physical side, okay? Yes, Wing Chun has a ton of drills. Over the years, I've learned a ton of drills from my teacher. And then looking back at it now, they're all good drills, but I think you want to simplify things to be like, what are the main things that will help me develop quickly and improve the most? Because sometimes as a student, you get overburdened with tons of different drills and stuff like that. And the more you know is actually the less you're skilled with. So you want to focus on the main basics. So for many years, I've always broken it down into a linear or even level that you have your stance, you have your punch, you have your shift, and then you have stance, punch, form, and shift. Okay, and then over the last maybe several months, I've been looking to reorganize everything to fit in not only from a physical aspect, from a mental aspect to a spiritual aspect, and that in turn turns into a life aspect in itself. The reason and the mentality behind this core concept is that, looking back and training wise, why only dive into the physical side? Now, it may not be to the case where if I say something mental, it's like kind of like, well, you won't be able to understand the mental, or you won't be able to understand the spiritual or the aspect of life in general. It's like that. Well, the truth is, even if you hear it in the physical aspect as far as how to do the motions correctly, you don't fully understand it anyway. So why not expose the student to ideas and concepts? And it doesn't have to be something that they necessarily have to grasp right away, but this is something that you can kind of plant in their heads in the beginning to understand, and later on they'll cultivate as you practice more and more. The way I looked at it, from my looking back for my years of studying, it was like always concentrating on the physical side, and then obviously the mental side is how to do it, why to do it, and so forth like that. And only it took like maybe past the 10, 11 years at the time when I was training with seafood before I started looking, maybe there's more to it. Maybe I got to look into the spiritual side to be able to figure out how to do this art. So it took me a while to get to that point where I started to appreciate and looking at a bigger picture of things. But I think in retrospect, I think this can be taught to students in the same evenly manner, okay? So if we look at it from the physical aspect, okay, I'm jumping here and there. We look at the physical aspect, we start with the stance. And the stance and everything I have has a purpose and a reason behind it as far as development is concerned. I'm trying to set a core of the base principles for everything, so that in essence, it's kind of like Luke, right? The Luke Skywalker era. He kind of trained with Obi, then he kind of trained with Yoda for I don't know how long, and then he later came back and Yoda basically said, I think I've told the story before, you've learned everything that you need, you know more than you know, and you can complete your training on your own. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to set it up for you that if you understand really these core concepts and you really dig deep into this, this is more than you need to know to actually decode it and do your own Luke and eventually become your own Jedi, okay? So we look first at the stance, right? That's always the common core. Day one, you learn the stance, the concept behind the stance, and what you're hoping to achieve from the stance and so forth. And you struggle with it's just you struggle with actually mastering it, but the concept in itself you can learn in a day as far as how to do the stance, right? So if we look there, we take this chunk of the concept of a stance, right? And then second, right, after we learn how to stand, then we look at basically the physical hands itself. Now from basically two structures, from the legs to the body for the stance, right? We actually, I shouldn't say that, because the arms are involved in our necessity process, but you can't see that overall. But for now, let's just say two structures. Then eventually you integrate the hands with it, which is the second stage, right? Actually developing the motion of the punch. And then finally, the third stage is once you have the stance and actually the punch combined, you then learn first form or silam tao. Okay, notice the stage is we're going one, stance, punch, silam tao, and then venturing off a little to an angle is then we get into chi sao. Now chi sao in itself, right now, the way I want you to look at it is that I need a partner to chi sao. You don't need a partner to chi sao. Everything I'm talking about the core is kind of like Luke, solo, right? He's doing it by himself. So if you remember in training in Wing Chun, you have yourself, you have dummy, and you have a partner. So 2/3 of your training, right? 2/3 of the training can be done simply by yourself and with an equipment, and then eventually you want to work with a partner and do it. So you can't be like, well, I'm not going to practice this or this because I don't have a partner. That's excuse, that's bullshit, and don't buy into that kind of crap, okay? So we have this order of stuff: stance, punch, silam tao, and then chi sao. Chi sao aspect that we're talking about is things that you can do on your own, like understanding how to properly do the roll motion from single stick to double stick, inside and outside gate, and then that in itself will make you have a solid physical core of everything that you need to do from Wing Chun. So hopefully, just to state that again, you have stance, punch, silam tao, and also chi sao. Each one has a core concept next to it as far as what you're mentally developing from that. Okay, so let me look at my notes here, what I have here. So when you deal with the stance first, you're basically learning how to face the force, right? And the way you face the force is either you fight or you flow with it. Okay, and I'll go into detail later on how exactly that comes about when you're learning the stance. But think of it as the mental aspect of stance, right? You have stance, you have face the force, either fight it or flow with it, and then you actually let's just stick to that idea of mental only. So that's that one stance, and then face the force. Then we have the second one, which is punch, and then from the punch you actually learn that two always exist. What does that actually mean? That means the yin and the yang. You can't have one or the other. So a simple idea is good or bad, up is down, left is right, dogs and cats, and then hell blows over, or whatever, okay? But basically the concept of the punch is two always exist, an active and a passive motion. Whether you believe it or not, even if you see this side, this other side does exist, okay? The depth of that we'll go into later on. Then when we look at first form, silam tao, you have one thought, right? A single thought. And that's the mental concept that you want to think as far as what am I developing from a single thought? Why is this so important? Again, we'll go deeper into that later on. And then finally, when you have sticky hands, what that is basically learning the game to get to the target. Okay, no matter what, you learn how to flow, or basically the understanding the game to get to the overall target. Okay? From that, you have the physical, then from that you have the mental, and then eventually you have the spiritual side that stems from that. So from the stance, you have what? The stance, you have the mental, right? Face the force. And then from the spiritual side, we're looking at an independent structure. That means the ability to stand on your own 2 feet. From doing one physical act and then the mental process involved, then you actually have the spiritual side that comes from the ability to stand on your own 2 feet. Then we look at basically the punch. We have the physical act of the punch. We have always then the mental aspect, always two exist. And basically, what do I have here? I actually have the spirituality is basically with great power comes great responsibility, or as I like to phrase it, is basically the confidence of humility. That is what you get from the spiritual side of actually developing from the punch. Then when we look at the form itself, you have learning the form motion from the physical aspect. Then we have basically, a single thought. And then from that, we actually have what? Everything matters, right? Everything matters, and the depth of that in the spiritual level will go later on as well. And then finally, we have chi sao. We have chi sao is like single stick, double stick, just the roll motion, nothing to do with any kind of partner right now. You have the mental aspect of basically the game of basically, the game of targeting, right? How exactly do I get to the target? And I developed that from the physical aspect to the mental aspect. And from that we have what, spirituality is the road to freedom. You need the structure to have that freedom to get to the target. And we'll go into detail with that. And then when you encompass all this and you put that all together, then if you can remember 1, 2, 3, 4 from the all physical, and I know I gave a ton of information, and I'm just too lazy to jot it all down, so you'll have to rewind it. You have the aspects of how that ties into life. So I'll just go in straight down order. Number 1, basically, you have self-investment, right? And I don't even think you can see my face, but it's okay. Self-investment. 2 is perfectly balanced. 3 is the power of me, and 4 is the target skill. Okay, target skill. So if you can visualize this, you have the physical, mental, spiritual, and life. And then if you, for example, we take stand, right? Face the force, right? Independent structure, and then investment itself. So if you can think of that, each one links to each other, and so forth. And you'll notice that everything's interwoven with each other. But you go one across, two across, three across, and four. This is just a brief summary to give you an idea of how we're looking at it. But the main goal overall is, once you do understand this core, and then notice it's not really that much. You just have to practice this, and then from the depth of that, you'll be able to achieve, you know, that Luke ability to be able to stand on your own 2 feet eventually. Hopefully you take that time to practice and see the depth of it. And this is just a initial start to a much more deeper subject. Okay.